everyone. My name is Evan.
And I'm Jonathan.
And you are listening to the Tackling Basketball Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, we have our busy agenda. So we are going to jump right in with our usual first segment, GOAT and Dick of the Week. And we will start with Jonathan. Who is your GOAT this week?
You know, my GOAT is not someone who has necessarily showed his strength in his league yet because he hasn't played yet. But he did show his strength of character recently, and that is Anthony Richardson. News came out recently that there was a bit of a big party or event within the Colts organization, and that the team made just an absolute mess of the facilities. And Anthony Richardson took it upon himself to stay late after the event was over and try to help clean it all up because he thought that his team took it a little bit too far, and he wanted to show that he was the kind of leader who would take responsibility for the actions of his teammates and himself. So just a real high character move, especially knowing that there are people who are literally paid to clean up after these stars. And he decided that he would take that step himself.
Yeah. Attaboy AR, you got Jonathan to say something good about you.
Not going to succeed as a quarterback, but you are a good leader.
To my GOAT of the week, this one pretty self-explanatory. San Antonio Spurs securing the number one pick in the draft, Victor Wembanyama, who by all accounts is a generational talent as long as he can stay healthy, which with a guy that tall and that scrawny is always a bit of a question mark. But if he can stay healthy, the Spurs are now going to be set for the next couple of decades to build just like they built around David Robinson and just like they built around Tim Duncan. So congratulations, San Antonio.
I mean, this brings up a very interesting question of, will Greg Popovich ever retire?
I don't know. I mean, I've heard a lot of things of people saying that they're actually kind of concerned that, with this new generation of players, that Popovich just may not be the right kind of coach anymore to coach these young guys. And I guess we'll see what Victor's made out of, whether he's the kind of guy who can put up with Popovich's verbal abuse or not. So we'll have to see how that goes.
Personally, I think he's proven himself over the last few seasons in that regard. I mean, he's had a lot of young players come in, and he's groomed them and shown some strength in player development. I think that he is going to prove himself again to be a good coach for Victor, and it's going to be his job until he doesn't want it anymore.
I'm just waiting for him to pass the torch to Manu or Tim.
That would be something.
All right, on to our Dick of the Week, and we each have two this week, so we'll go one at a time here. Jonathan, who's your first Dick of the Week?
My first Dick of the Week is ESPN. Oh my God, I've never hated that broadcast team more in my life than I did in Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals. Everyone here in Denver knew that it was going to be a disaster, but we just didn't understand how far they would go. Every single time that a foul was called against the Lakers, they complained about how soft the league has gotten and what happened to this game that we loved. Every time that a foul wasn't called against the Nuggets, they complained that there should have been a foul and it's egregious how the refs are treating everything. Even though the Lakers shot 23 free throws versus the Nuggets 10, I believe was the breakdown before the final minutes of the game, when obviously Jamal found the line 7 times to close out the game. And then just calls for saying that the Lakers really feel like they're up 1-0 in this series. And it even almost felt like that after they went down 0-2. It's like we're giving them moral victories. And my least favorite phrase in the playoffs. Evan, do you know what that phrase might be?
No.
It is a series doesn't start until the home team loses. And I hear that phrase, and shout out to Jalen Rose for kind of combating this a little bit. He was the one guy on ESPN who did this. But imagine after Game 3 on Saturday, if the Nuggets happen to find a way to win in LA, do you think ESPN is going to come on the broadcast with the Nuggets up 3-0 and say, now it's a series, now we're excited? No, the series has started. It's 2-0. It's time for the Lakers to make adjustments or fall. I don't understand how the Nuggets are still the underdog.
Yeah, it is what it is. And to clarify as well, ESPN is like Dan Snyder. We can only use him once for Dick of the Week because it's ESPN, and we can put him on here all the time. So this is Jonathan's one pass at them for the year. Over to my first Dick of the Week, another very self-explanatory one, Ja Morant. The dude is an idiot. Nobody understands what this guy is thinking, why this guy so badly wants to be a gangster when he grew up a middle-class American. Nobody understands why his mom has been putting him in the situations that she's been putting him in, why he keeps hopping on Instagram Live. And I mean, his friend in the front seat had more sense than he did, because he at least tried to move the live away as soon as Ja pulled up the gun.
As soon as the gun went up, the video just immediately panned away, and you could almost see the look on his friend's face, like, "Oh shit, did I just like fuck him like his entire career?"
Yeah.
And he did it to himself, but yeah, you did.
Yeah, and I mean, now it's Nike has taken Ja's shoes down off of their app, which. Just like with Kyrie Irving, that's what happened before Kyrie lost his deal with Nike.
Yeah.
So Ja's going to lose his Nike deal. Adam Silver in his press conference on the draft lottery night just seemed disappointed. I mean, not even bad. I mean, you could tell that him and Ja had a heart-to-heart, and Ja had made him believe that he was going to change and wouldn't do something like this again. And Adam Silver really just seemed defeated and disheartened by it. So Ja's going to wind up missing a significant portion of next season. We'll have to see just how significant, whether that's a quarter of the season, half the season. I'm guessing they probably wouldn't go a full season for something that wasn't illegal. That would probably be a little much. But regardless, Ja has now put himself in a position where his career is in jeopardy. And I don't understand. So, Ja, Dick of the Week.
Yeah, for sure. It's just confusing. But yeah, for my second Dick of the Week, Canada. A little bit of a jab at the fires going on right now, but of course, all of the prayers in the world go out to the people in Canada who are dealing with it. But more than that, the real reason that they are the Dick of the Week is because of hockey. You see that... It's just a weird playoffs this year for the NHL, because you have these 4 teams left who are really far south of Canada. No one's left in Canada, and it's like Florida, Vegas. Who else is still in it right now?
Seattle.
No, they're not. Seattle's out.
Oh, that's right.
Because they were somewhat north at least, but it's all these cities left over now that are absolutely... like not pillars of the NHL. And this is like the NBA's nightmare, is not having the Lakers or the Celtics make the finals this year. But it's happening to the NHL, and just these places that are not hockey places, not hockey cities, are finding great success this year. It's interesting. I'm excited for it personally, but if you are from a hockey town, you are not very happy right now.
Suck at Canada. And then my final Dick of the Week, Philadelphia 76ers. This one's pretty obvious. They were the favorite in the East, completely blew it against the Celtics, allowed Jason Tatum to drop a 50-piece on them in Game 7. Joel Embiid, while he is hurt, and we'll have to see whether he winds up having surgery or something, did not play well pretty much the entire series for the most part. And then James Harden was... bit inconsistent throughout the series, but now, according to Twitter and insiders, it seems like James Harden leaving is all but guaranteed, which I think now leaves the 76ers in a very vulnerable position, where Joel Embiid very may well request a trade out of Philadelphia if they aren't able to bring in another star, because he said it in his press conference after the game. He can't do it by himself, apparently, and he needs his teammates to step up. And apparently everybody else on that team is not capable of stepping up, supposedly. So,
even though he had one of the worst games for a star player in like a closeout playoff game ever.
But But yes, I mean, if Harden leaves, Tobias Harris would be the second best player on that team, and I'm sorry, as much as I like Tobias Harris, you're not winning a championship with Tobias as your number 2. So he may very well be gone, but regardless of whether he stays or not, I think it's fair to say at this point that the process has failed. The 76ers experiment has not been successful, and who knows, maybe if they had kept Sam Hinkie around,
Sam Hinkie is the truth.
It would have actually worked out. But here we are, 76ers failing to make the conference finals once again, and we'll have to see, but I would not be surprised if Philadelphia now has to kind of blow things up a little bit.
Yeah, and frankly, deserved.
Yeah.
The single worst nickname, or the single worst motto in the NBA history is trust the process. How do you make that your motto? How do you get fans to embrace, oh yeah, intentionally losing and making boring basketball for half of a decade is good for us? And I am relieved to see that it might not have yielded any positive results, because that is just not the way that the NBA is meant to operate.
Yeah. With that, though, we'll transition over to, of course, hot topic this past week, the NBA draft lottery. Jonathan, coming out of it, what were your kind of immediate thoughts and reactions? We talked about the Spurs already being set up nicely, but what about our other top 5 teams with Hornets at 2, Blazers 3, Rockets 4, Detroit Pistons 5?
You know, there was a lot of talk leading into the draft lottery about how the NBA is capable of rigging it and how they should, or maybe they should, maybe they will. Those talks are all a little bit stupid, I think. It almost became more suspicious that only the team that was supposed to get the 5th pick rose into the top 4. It was a really tame draft lottery is what I'm getting at, with the biggest upset, obviously, Detroit moving from the 1st overall pick to the 5th overall pick. Huge disappointment for that franchise, a franchise who clearly was not tanking. They are just that bad. And to effectively fall out of contention for any of the top guys in this draft is brutal for them. But I think as NBA fans, we are probably excited that Detroit is not getting Victor. We're excited that the Rockets are not getting Victor. We're excited that the Hornets are not getting Victor. So really it was Spurs Blazers for me that I wanted to see him go to. So I'm happy with how it worked out.
Yeah, for sure. And the Hornets and Blazers are both have to be ecstatic that they're now in the top 3. I mean, the Hornets now have their pick of either Brandon Miller or Scoot Henderson, both of which fantastic players. Victor's obviously the top prize in the draft, but Brandon Miller and Scoot are also phenomenal. So
for sure,
great pieces to pick up. Charlotte will get the pick of the litter there, and the Blazers have come out and said that they're going to be shopping the pick, which, if, like they're saying, they want to contend for a championship, is absolutely the right thing to do, is to go out and get another star to pair with Damian Lillard. And Damian said that he doesn't want just another top draft pick that's going to take a couple of years to develop, because Dame doesn't have that time anymore.
For sure.
So maybe if they'd gotten the first pick and it was Victor, they may have considered staying there and drafting Victor. But there's also the argument that they would have gotten a king's ransom to trade that pick away.
Mm-hmm.
So
without a doubt,
Blazers are definitely happy. I think Hornets are pretty happy. And then sucks for the Pistons. I mean, Detroit fans have got to be just gutted. And I think I saw something where it was over the past 5 lotteries, the Pistons have always fallen like out of the range that they were supposed to be picking in, which is just brutal.
There are a few teams that have had absolutely abysmal luck. Detroit is one of them. I think that Miami and Denver are 2 of the teams that have never once improved in the lottery. They've only ever fallen, which is insane. But yeah, there is just this element of some teams have horrible luck, and Detroit happens to be one of them.
Or like everybody's saying, the NBA just hates Detroit and
it could be
is rigging it against them, which maybe. At least the NBA is not as blatant about it as the NHL.
The issue I have with that theory is that the NBA is owned as a collection by its owners, and the NBA is nearly incapable of hiding those facts from the owners.
Yeah.
So how is anybody outside of the top 5 markets going to be okay with them rigging something as important as the draft lottery? They aren't. So more than likely, this is a fair system. It just... people don't understand statistics. They don't understand that a team constantly falling actually makes sense. It's just sort of the way that probability works.
Yeah, for sure.
But a little segue here. Evan, you're a Blazers fan, and you just saw your team rise from 5 to 3. We talked briefly about their own plans for the pick, but do you agree with those plans? What do you want to see done?
I agree with him. I think Dame deserves a shot. I mean, I obviously love Damian Lillard. He's been loyal to the city. He really is a phenomenal human being, even though he runs his mouth on Twitter sometimes a little too much, but that's fine. But he deserves a chance because the Blazers really haven't given that to him yet, and now they're in a position to do something with it. I personally would love to see the pick packaged with Anthony Simons. If we have to give a player away in it, a lot of people have been talking about Shaedon Sharpe. I would much rather hold on to Shaedon. As much as I love Anthony Simons, Ant is fantastic. I just think in terms of roster construction, it makes more sense to keep Shaedon rather than keeping Ant, who is a point guard that they're making play the 2 because they kind of have to if they want to start in lineup. Yeah. So I think defensively and even offensively to a degree, it'll just make more sense to trade Ant away. There's a whole slew of guys who could be the target. People keep talking about Joel Embiid, which would obviously be freaking wild if you paired Damian Lillard with Joel Embiid.
Right.
The Blazers would immediately become a contender in the West.
As long as Joel fixes his character a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Hey, Blazers, the biggest thing, chemistry, yay. Mikal Bridges from the Nets, I think is a very interesting
That'd be interesting.
Option.
You might be able to get Mikal Bridges plus someone as well.
Yeah, exactly. So. Especially since him and Dame actually work out together in the offseason and are really good friends. So you'd already have that chemistry there. And he would be a great piece on that team. OG Anunoby is a guy who we've been looking at for a while. Pascal Siakam is an all-star who could help the team out. So there's a lot of options there that the Blazers could go target, but I am very glad that they're deciding to go try and actually chase a championship rather than just going full rebuild here. Because with the Blazers' history, too, even if they were to just go full rebuild, they probably wouldn't trade Damian Lillard away, which is what you would need to do if you're going to do a full rebuild. So
yeah, I agree with you. I see 2 options really for the Blazers right now, which is trade the 3rd overall pick or trade Dame.
Yeah.
I am probably leaning towards the trade Dame side. I don't think that trading the 3rd overall pick opens a championship window by any means, and that blowing it up a little bit, sort of like the Rockets did a few years ago, the Thunder a little bit more recently, and then the Jazz even more recently, blowing it up a little bit might help them sort of vault to the next level in 5 years. But, of course, you're a small market team. That comes with a lot of risks of losing the players that you've tried to foster recently, because when they have an opportunity to go somewhere else, make more money, and get more fans, you need sustained success in order to sustain good players. So it's a tricky spot to be in. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. But now, switching over to postseason conversation. Lakers Nuggets, obviously a series you care a whole heck of a lot about, so we can dig into that here. We won't touch on Heat and Celtics quite yet because they've only played one game. Heat won it. Probably talk about it in the next one once we see a little bit more from them. But
Heat won on the road. It's certainly impressive.
Yeah.
And that means the series has begun. But there is a lot left to learn with that series, and it's true of the Lakers Nuggets as well. There's a lot left to learn still. We got to see how they adapt. But yeah, let's go ahead and kick that one off.
Yeah, I mean, my main thought was Nuggets Lakers right now is I think Nuggets are by far the superior team. I think they should be able to take it in 5 or 6 games here. The one concern I do have for the Nuggets, though, is stamina. And the Lakers also have that concern as well with how old LeBron is and how AD is constantly hurt. The Nuggets, though, have never played this deep into the season. And Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr., over the past couple of years with how much they've been hurt, have never played this much basketball in a season over the past few years. So there is that partial concern to me, especially with Jokic putting up the freaking crazy stats that he has been, but the game still being close. There is part of me that is a little concerned that Jokic could wear down here, and maybe that doesn't even happen in this series, but by the time they reach the NBA Finals, I think there could be some concern that Jokic will just be tired from going full, 110% every single game, balling out. But that has yet to be seen. Hopefully they're able to stay strong. They're all very young, so it's quite possible they won't burn out, but it is a legitimate concern with the fact that they've just never been here before.
I do think that the Lakers probably have to be more worried about that than the Nuggets because of their age. LeBron and AD are older than our oldest star. And we saw both teams get a little bit low energy last night towards the end of the game. And it came down, honestly, that game came down to the endurance and the resilience of the Nuggets in my mind. The question is, are they able to hold that strong? And the importance is that not only do they beat the Lakers this series, but if they want to be a championship team, they need to do it quickly. Because there is no rest in this series, and there's not a ton of rest built into the finals. So they need to create that for themselves by giving them some days off, by winning this series early as possible. But yeah, I think they're fully capable of doing it. There was a lot of noise on social media and even from Lakers players themselves after Game 1 that, like we talked a little bit earlier about the moral victory that the Lakers had. They put Rui Hachimura on Jokic and they solved it. Clearly that's not the case, but even breaking down like the actual efficiency, the Nuggets shot 55% from the field and 47% from 3 in Game 1. And those are incredible numbers. We saw them put up some surprising baskets. But what wasn't accounted for in those tweets was that the Lakers put up 55% from the field as well. And instead of 47% from 3, they shot 46% from 3. Like, both teams played out of their mind in Game 1. And the Lakers walked off the court, LeBron and AD both laughing in their press conference because they're like, oh, the Nuggets aren't going to do that again. They failed to see that they also weren't going to be able to sustain that level of play. And they might get hot again for another game or two. They might take this to 6. But in the end, the Nuggets are going to be the more consistent team. I think they've showed that. And I think that they will be fully capable of closing this series out. They need to stay committed to it. All right, well, moving on. We now have some NFL fantasy football talk. A lot of dynasty leagues, which is our personal favorite format, have recently begun a lot of startup drafts, as well as a lot of rookie drafts, which is more what we'll probably be focusing on for this segment. But just because it's early in the NFL offseason doesn't mean that it's too early for fantasy football. So, Evan, why don't you go ahead and kick us off with some fantasy advice? Yeah,
I mean, this, for the rookie draft and dynasty, this is kind of an unusual year. I mean, generally with the first round, by the time you hit, the end of the first round in a 12-player or a 12-team league, you start getting to guys that maybe aren't actually worth a first-round pick. They may not have that first-round value. But I feel like that's usually by the time you hit like maybe the 9th, 10th, 11th pick.
Yeah.
In this draft, I feel like you hit that when you get to pick 7. In my mind, like Bijan, Gibbs, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Zay Flowers, and then Stroud and Young are like the 6 guys in my mind who I'm like, oh yeah, they're first round picks. And then it's a bit of a drop off. And you have other receivers, and you have Zach Charbonnet, running back for the Seahawks. But even him, I mean, he has to compete with Kenneth Walker. And so it's a bit of a weird year for rookies. There's a ton of second-round value talent this year.
There's a lot of, the talent at the top of the first is incredible, especially relative to, the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. And then, like you said, there's a huge cliff. I love that you mentioned Zay Flowers before the cliff because a lot of people disagree with that take right now. You're seeing him go towards the end of the first round in rookie drafts. I've even seen a couple of leagues post that he fell to 201, 202, which to me is just insane. I mean, he is just a buttery smooth route runner, always able to find himself open, just got incredible technique, incredible awareness, makes every catch that he encounters, and he may not have the biggest catch radius, which is not ideal for me, but that isn't the biggest deal for him because he will find himself open. He'll encourage his quarterback to not miss him when he's there. The last time that I had a player of a similar archetype graded as highly as I grade Zay Flowers, it was Justin Jefferson. And I'm not saying he'll rise to that level, but I am saying I want him everywhere I can get him.
Yeah, and he's interesting too, being on the Ravens, because he very well has the chance to become wide receiver one there in Baltimore, even though there is Rashad Bateman and Odell Beckham Jr. OBJ is past his prime, and Bateman hasn't really shown wide receiver one capabilities. So, I mean, we could really see Flowers essentially mainly competing with Mark Andrews for targets.
I will be surprised if he's not their wide receiver one by the end of the season. I won't be surprised if he is their wide receiver one at the start of the season. Yeah. He is a special talent, and I think that he's going to do well in this league.
And especially in comparison to, I mean, you look at every other receiver at the top of this class, and no one else is likely in that spot to become wide receiver one. Maybe Jackson Smith and Jigba beats out Lockett and DK because he's just a freak of a talent, and DK has been a bit inconsistent, and Lockett's getting old. So he may be wide receiver one on the Seahawks by the end of the season. But Johnston with the Chargers has lots of competition there. He'll probably be wide receiver 3 throughout most of the year.
I'm not huge on his film either. I mean, he's a consistent guy, which is really important, but I don't view him as a very strong first round prospect. So
and then Jordan Addison with the Vikings. While I like him, he's behind Justin Jefferson. He's essentially going to be the new Adam Thielen in Minnesota, which is fine. He'll get targets. He'll put up some decent points, but he's not going to be the number one guy. And we also don't know exactly how well he's going to develop. So then you get into guys like, Jaden Reed and Jonathan Mingo and guys like that have potential, but are by no means a surefire thing. So it's this draft, really just across the board, is a lot of guys who have potential, and you're just kind of taking a Hail Mary on them. Especially when it comes to the quarterbacks, obviously, because once you get to Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, I mean, that's exactly what it is. It's a Hail Mary. You're hoping that they pan out.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of, let's talk a little bit about the early second round. There's a couple of guys that I really do like there. Namely, Kendre Miller. He was one of the guys that I really hyped up on an earlier podcast, because back when I started talking about him, he was ranked as the running back number 9. And I thought that was ridiculous. I thought that he was potentially the third best in this class, and I will stand by that. I still think of him as better than Zach Charbonnet, especially when you consider landing spot for them both.
Yeah.
And he's a very tempting prospect at that position. Then I also really like Josh Downs. I think that he is going to quickly become a favorite for Anthony Richardson, and that if those two find any success in this league, a lot of it will come together just to be able to build up that chemistry with this young quarterback who is unfamiliar with the NFL. I do like Marvin Mims. I go back and forth on him a lot. He's just I'm not huge on most burners in this league. I don't think that they tend to be strong fantasy prospects because they're usually like boom or bust guys on a week-to-week basis. But he's certainly a good candidate there. And it just, the list continues with decent prospect after decent prospect.
I mean, we talk about a lot of good second-round talent. This might wind up being the best that the third and maybe even fourth round has been for rookie drafts in quite a while. Because by the time you hit the third and, depending on how it goes, maybe even the early, the first few picks in the fourth, there's a chance that there's still some decent talent there. You're getting above the actual value of those picks.
Right.
So it's a weird year. And then I was going to say with tight ends, it's very odd. I have no idea how to value tight ends this year because like last year, Trey McBride, by far and away, regardless of the landing destination, was the number one tight end. He was going to be the number one tight end off the boards. Everybody loved him. This year, like some people liked Kincaid, some people liked Mayer. It's up in the air. And then you get to landing spots. Kincaid is great. I think he fits well with Buffalo, but they also have Dalton Knox. So who knows? And Dalton Knox isn't old, so who knows when Kincaid is actually going to get his chance to become tight end one. And so,
I think Kincaid's going to start out tight end one really quickly. There are very few telling signs. Scouting tight ends is really difficult, even when you go to analytics. But one of the most telling things when you look at the analytics from college success to NFL success is how tight ends perform when they're operating out of the slot. And no one has done that better in the last decade than Dalton Kincaid. He has found incredible success running as a slot receiver in college. And in fact, the Buffalo Bills have already come to him and told him that he will primarily be operating as a slot wide receiver in the NFL, which is really interesting to me. There's sort of a funny meme going around right now because tight ends get paid less than wide receivers, and it's like, well, can I get a wide receiver tag if I'm going to be a wide receiver? Well, no, we don't want to pay you. But I do think that he will find quick success in this league, especially with Josh Allen throwing him the ball. It's just tight ends often take a few years to develop, so whether or not we see that year one is up in the air. Don't take him in your draft expecting him to push you to the next level, but he's a good asset to draft and stash at a minimum.
Yeah. And I would probably suggest no earlier than probably late second at the earliest
for Kincaid.
You may say earlier than that. My main reason with that is that there's just so many high potential receivers that can come before him, and you don't want to be the guy that misses out on a good receiver chance going for a tight end. So
it's really how far you believe in Kincaid, because a good tight end isn't very valuable. If you believe he can become a Travis Kelce or a Darren Waller or even a Dallas Goedert, then now his value is through the roof to you, especially if you're in a tight end premium league, which we're not. But it all comes down to how you value him. I probably put him early second round in most leagues, maybe mid-second round. He often goes earlier than that, though, so it might be difficult to justify picking him, even though I do think he has a lot of upside.
Well, now to our final segment of the day to wrap things up, our 100 units and 10,001 betting segment. For those that are new to this, Jonathan and I put units down on the game. The reason we say units instead of actual cash amounts is because we don't feel the need to disclose how much or how little we are betting on games. But we're going to start out with 100 units. So, Jonathan, what is your 100 units bet of the week?
Yeah, so for this, I went with the Heat money line, and while I do think that it's going to be a huge uphill battle for them going in on the road with the Celtics having time to adjust to the ways that they sort of punched them in the mouth last. The Celtics are going to come out swinging, but money line is plus 370. I think I will lose my bet, but it's just too good of odds for me to pass up. And I see that Evan went with something similar, or I don't see that. I think Evan went with something similar.
Yes, I did.
But I'm going half a unit on Heat money line, hoping that it pays me big.
Yeah. And I'm going, the spread for the game tonight was set at a 9.5, which is a crazy spread, considering the fact that the Heat won the first game. So I'm taking Miami Heat at plus 9.5, which is odds are minus 106, so not the greatest bet in history, but I'm putting a quarter of a unit down on that. I feel pretty confident that the Heat will either be able to win or will keep the game within 9 points. So,
all right. I do like that bet a lot. I normally don't go against the spread, but this is a game that was very tempting to me. I just tend to prefer money line, so I went with the better odds.
Yeah.
But now for the 10,001 bet, this is the section where we basically make an outlandish parlay that will pay us at least plus 10,000, even though that's not 10,001, that's 101. But for my 10,001 bet this day, I took both Denver and Miami to sweep.
Ooh.
Which, like we said, these are outlandish bets. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's plus 14,600. I'm putting a quarter unit on it, and there's a chance if Miami is able to close this game out, they have home court advantage for the finality of the sweep. If Denver is able to stay strong, like the mood after last game was very much, we aren't finished yet. We have more work to do, which is exactly the mindset you need to be able to beat LeBron even up 2-0. So there's a chance. I like it better than plus 14,000, but it is still a long shot.
Yeah. I'm kind of surprised that there wasn't a higher plus odds on that, honestly. You're betting on two sweeps. For my 10,001, I haven't bet baseball in a while, so I just decided to put together just a 9-leg parlay of picking games. So for tonight, May 19th, I've picked the Pirates, the Yankees, the Rays, the Phillies, the Tigers, the Orioles, the Mets, the Mariners, and the Rangers money lines for them all to win. That is giving me plus 18,387, and I put a quarter of a unit down on that. So, come on, baby. As much as I hate having to root for the Yankees, I would kind of like to win money. So,
yeah, for sure.
But that is all that we have for this episode. Thank you all for tuning in. And Jonathan, how about you close us out with some outlandish, saucy take?
You know, a couple weeks ago I said Denver will win the in an NBA Finals with only 2 total losses. That's already been passed. I'm now going to say 4 total losses. They have 3. They're going to lose 1 more game.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Good night.